Just booster shots made systems who have been vaccinated. Plus, new projections indicate the highly contagious COVID-19 Delta variant will peak in the fall.
According to the COVID-19 Scenario Modeling Hub, a group of researchers working with the CDC, the Delta variant is expected to continue to cause a rise in the number of coronavirus cases that will likely peak in October, where there could be 60,000 cases and 850 deaths a day. The number of coronavirus cases have more than doubled over the past 2 weeks. Most have involved the highly contagious Delta variant and have struck those who were not vaccinated. Sue Guzman, Fox News.
I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Do you have what it takes to rock a mic? Then open mic at Slippery Fish awaits you. No matter your skill or skill level, if you spit spoken word, sing, or rap, then this is your chance to break it out. New Wave Studio invites you every Thursday night. The Slippery Fish stage is yours if you know how to work it. DJ Heartless will lay down the beat so you can bust your flow. Your favorite Bud Family buckets are ice cold and on special, along with Grey Goose, Bombay Sapphire, Bacardi, and Evan Williams cocktails. Sing, rap, or speak your heart out every Thursday at Slippery Fish's open mic night. Budweiser reminds you that responsibility matters.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Boy, it feels good to be in front of a microphone and be able to say that again after 2 days in exile with no tall tales, no tailgaters, no Jose, the whole thing. But we're back now, so here we go. Let's start out with Jemmy Ekotny. And the Daily News today says settlement will help address the island's drug problem. Drug addiction is a scourge on Guam across the nation and world. It destroys not only drug dealers, but also families. It can lead to job loss and homelessness and can cause financial ruin, lead to other crimes and imprisonment. On Guam, nonprofit organizations have been primarily responsible for recovery programs and treatment. There's often a long waiting list for addicts to get needed treatment. The Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center's New Beginnings substance treatment program has been servicing clients out of a rented Hagatna space for years, and a new $6 million drug and alcohol treatment facility will be built, paid for the U.S. Department of Interior. We are just so thankful, said Teresa Areola, Director of Behavioral Health. We've been dealing with the Wuhan virus pandemic, but there's been a pandemic on Guam since before the Wuhan virus. Areola said the island has been struggling with drug and alcohol abuse for decades, and residents deserve, at minimum, a state-of-the-art facility for proper treatment. Guam will soon have money that can be used to expand treatment programs for those addicted to drugs and alcohol. Guam will receive upward of $10 million as a result of the $26 billion proposed national opioid settlement with pharmaceutical distributors according to Attorney General Levin Camacho. The settlement is a result of investigations by state attorneys general into whether the pharmaceutical distributors met a legal duty to refuse to ship opioids to pharmacies that submitted suspicious orders, and whether Johnson & Johnson misled patients and doctors about the addictive nature of opioid drugs, the AG's office stated. Guam will receive the $10 million over 18 years. Most of the money will be used for treatment and prevention of opioid use and co-occurring substance abuse disorders. Actions speak louder than words, Camacho said. We'll continue to deliver on the promise we made to secure more resources and fight Guam's drug problems. The new treatment center is vital to our community's well-being as the expansion program to help residents addicted to drugs and alcohol. Yeah, it's a nice release and a nice plug here for Attorney General Levin Camacho. Action speaks louder than words. We'll continue to deliver on the promise we made to secure more resources and fight Guam's drug problem. You know who said that? Levin Camacho.
Oh.
Yeah.
Write it down.
Yeah. Okay, so much for that. Let's go to the Post. Survey proves we can change the conversation ourselves. Year in, year out, we hear how Guam is below the stateside average in wages, education, and health care. Year after year, we also learn how we have a high cost of living and higher average rates of cancer, diabetes, and sexual assault. While research into these critical areas has tremendous value, they are also old stories. At least that's how Kevin Lee, a doctoral candidate out of MIT, puts it. He's part of a team conducting what's being called the 2021 Guahan Survey. The team is, here we go, reaching out to Chamorro adults on Guam and asking them to speak on issues of identity, topics of importance, and their desires for the future. It may be just the first step in changing conversations about Guam's indigenous population. But the effort is as noble as it is necessary. After all, how many times has a politician or armchair expert proclaimed what issue is a priority of the people? Well, just it happened again just today, didn't it? The Commission on Chamorro Independence just did that. Or what option belongs to a vocal minority without anything about anecdotes and best guesses to back up the assertion? How else can we be truly certain of an answer to a question unless it's asked and answered? There's much more behind the survey, but at its heart is a search for a true, diverse picture of Chamorro options, as you were, Chamorro opinions. That goal is one of the reasons we look forward to seeing the results of this study, which is set to be published sometime in January. It can help to break an ever-present stereotype facing the Chamorro people and other ethnic and social groups on Guam and around the world, that we are monolithic. That's a stereotype?
I don't understand.
Of course, not every Chamorro person thinks the same or has the same values or wants the same future for Guam. That's as unreasonable as believing in a left-handed monolith. Yes, shared experience can lead to shared beliefs, but having something in common rarely leads to having everything in common. This survey can be the launching pad for similar surveys for other groups on our island, just as a survey of Native Hawaiians inspired and with its principal researcher involved in the local effort, guided the ongoing research. Other mistaken monoliths can be misspelled simply by serving what the group has been lumped together actually thinks. Chamorro residents aren't the only ones facing stereotypes. Filipino, Micronesian, business and military communities, and many more who call Guam home are often and unfairly painted with the same brushstroke. This kind of research can also help tailor government services and grassroots action to what's actually going on in front of us and what people on the ground actually think. For far too long, our island has let others frame the discussions we have among ourselves, and we focused research on others, such as federal grantors have told us is important to grant. All that good work should continue, but our leaders should also promote and support efforts by local people to create a bank of academic research that is made by us for us. I'll bet you Ron McMench is just tearing his hair out when he reads this. A commitment to investing in studies specifically for Guam and its people will lead to better strategies and better solutions, especially those not found stateside, because they're uniquely ours. I am just too cynical. I don't want to see the results of the survey. I want to see the questions, and I want to see the methodology. I don't trust anybody who puts on a survey to be doing anything other than push polling, like the one that came out of Hawaii.
Especially one that has the premise that this is going to be the first of its kind.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just not impressed. I'm not anxious. And I suspect the chances of actually seeing the questions and the survey or the methodology are range somewhere down there around slim and none.
I also have an issue here with this. Usually when you list things, they're compare and contrast to one another because they're separate.
Yeah.
Here they list Filipino, Micronesian, business, and military communities.
Yeah.
Are there no such thing as Filipino military, Micronesian military?
Absolutely.
Businesses?
No.
I don't understand that.
You're just one or
one or the other.
Yeah. If you were a general in the Marine Corps and a Filipino, no, you're a Filipino.
But I thought we were trying to get rid of those monolithic stereotypes.
Exactly. Yeah. Kind of tells you something about the folks working on this thing, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. So, I got to get into Facebook here.
They knock you off again?
I'm just trying to get in my email here. I am not in on my desktop either. It may take me just a second, I guess. I hate this thing. It just never works the way it's supposed to, you know? Just bear with me for a second here, sports fans. Oh, shucks. Yeah, well, as I'm working on it, I finally found it. Okay. And who beat me to the punch today here? We got Janice Wong from Arizona, I suspect. We got Mark Anthony Even Troy Torres, Guam's only muckraker. And we've got, let's see here, Ishmael Velez. 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. Bob instructed the Sons of Liberty, then turned to the ground and shouted, "What will you do? What will you do about Kim Jong-lu?" And we got Brad Wood here, and Rico Blancaflor, and Mark Anthony again. Okay, so we're just about ready to start the game here. If I could just get it on my Facebook now, I'd be all set. I mean, on my laptop. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, sorry for the delay, folks. You know, the problem with me on Tall Tales is you give me 2 days off and you got to retrain me. Okay, let's take a look and see what's on the card for today. And today we only have one new item and only one local item. And it goes like this. Tall Tales versus Melvin Wonpat. And then we've got some holdovers from previous days. And the Tall Tales versus Melvin Wonpat picks up on something that ran in the Daily News on Friday, which reported on a speech that I gave to the Rotary Club on Thursday. And the title of that speech was, as you were, let me see here. I'm a little disorganized today. It was decolonization, critical race theory, separatists, and the Guam news media. You may remember I did spend some time talking about it. And self-determination, I pointed out that there really is no effort towards self-determination, as you were. There's no decolonization. Starting out with decolonization, there's no effort to decolonize the island of Guam or the territory of Guam. And I directed you to the statute that creates the so-called Commission on Decolonization, the full name of which is the Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. And I skipped to the media and said the media does a lot of gaslighting here on the whole question of decolonization, because they're not careful. They would have you believe that the word decolonization is a synonym for Chamorro self-determination. Just not true. I read into the legislative findings on the Chamorro Separatist Commission and found this. The United States, as the succeeding colonial power over the lands and people of Guam, acceded to and recognized the 1898 Treaty of Paris that the political rights of the native inhabitants of Guam shall be protected, and their collective right to political self-determination is inalienable. That's what one of the laws of Guam says in a statement of legislative findings, and it's a lie. It's just wrong. Here's what the Treaty of Paris actually says. If you go to Article 9, the last sentence, here's what it says. The civil rights and political status of the native inhabitants of the territories hereby ceded to the United States shall be determined by Congress. That's all it says. All the rest of it that's in the statute is fluff, like so much that comes out of the colonization for Chamorro independence. So I laid that all out at the Rotary meeting, and it was reported by Joe Titano, too. And when the story came out on Friday, I pointed out that Joe Titanotu's story was exactly what I pointed out that the media was doing, that the media was tilting toward this whole separatist idea. I mentioned Anamita Carr of the Daily News, and then I went to this article in the Daily News that covered the Rotary meeting. And this is what I pointed out. I was quoted thusly: "There's so many people who feel uncertain about the topic, who don't know where they stand, who have questions." And, oh, wait a minute, I'm looking at the wrong article here. Yeah, here we go. I'm just having a little difficulty getting my papers and all in order here. Yeah, the article that came out said, on Guam, proponents of critical race theory take issues from the past out of context by applying the ethics, manners, and morals of today, according to Klitzkie. The result, he stated, was usually the conclusion that the U.S. was hopelessly, systemically racist. And the article went on to say, Michael Bavacqua, chair of the Commission on Decolonization's Independent Task Force, Michael Luan Vacqua, took a different stance on the matter, describing Klitzkie on Thursday as the archetypical separatist. Well, that is exactly what I complained about, that this came out of nowhere as though it were a fact that everyone understood. Like you didn't have to, if you wrote an article about geology, you wouldn't have to say the world is round. You wouldn't have to say according to such and such treatise, etc. Well, I sent a letter to Joseph Joe Titano, the author of this column, of this story today, and asked where that sentence came from. And he wrote back and said, well, you know, the editor screwed it up. I wonder if they share an editor with the Post.
The editor.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure Michael Bavacqua was also asking the same thing. When did I talk to Joe Titano II?
Well, and then Joe Titano says it's been fixed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so now I have the fix.
Well, that's the reason why you wrote the letter to him.
Uh-huh, exactly. And he says, I definitely don't mind that label, when I labeled him the archetypical separatist. He took issue with Klitzkie's statement about there being a small minority of people, citing over 2,000 individuals who showed up for the Finogi March for Chamorro Self-Determination. Those people were just the tip of the iceberg. Well, even if that's the case, that's a small minority of the people, unless this is a huge iceberg that contains 170,000 people. And then he goes on to say, there's so many people who feel uncertain about the topic, who don't know where they stand, who have questions. And so the best thing we can do is educate people to not shut down the conversation, he said. Well, he should tell that to Melvin Wanpat. Denying that there was an issue around decolonization would not solve it. As for critical race theory, Bavacqua stated that the way to move past the injustices of the past that surrounded race was by discussing them openly, not sweeping them under the rug.
You don't say.
When you are at the bottom, you know, race is something that you can never really get away from. When you're at the top, race is an inconvenience or something you don't have to deal with. Now, is he proving my point or not?
why are we always put at the bottom?
Well, I mean, is he proving exactly what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah. The issues that minority groups in America had to deal with were still very real, he said. That's exactly critical race theory, exactly. He came along and proved my point for me in this so-called update of the article.
I think that last sentence is another change in the tense of the sentence, or even we're talking about the present when you're at the bottom, blah, blah, and then at the very last sentence, we go back to the past.
Yeah. The issues that minority groups in America had to deal with were still very real, he said. So,
and if anyone listens to this show, they know that you've never denied that.
Right. Yeah. That the issues of the past were very real. And I explained to the Rotary, and I'll explain it again, what the critical race theory does. And it's not something that you study, like the theory of relativity or something like that, right? It's something that you're supposed to practice. And you practice it by doing this. You go back to a historical event that you can paint in a very unfavorable light, in our case, to the U.S. And once you've done that, then you judge what happened then by today's manners, morals, and ethics. And when it doesn't measure up, you condemn it. And you say, how awful, those horrible people. And then you point out that what happened is actually just happened a couple of days ago. It's still happening now, that the American system is built on that kind of a thought process, and it can't be fixed. And the only thing to do is not to reform it, but leave it behind. Try a different system. Independence from the United States. That's classic critical race theory, as shown to us in what Michael Bavacqua told Joe Taitano. Exactly.
This wasn't a fix to that statement. This is a whole nother article right here.
It was, yeah.
Which is not printed in the PDN.
Exactly. It didn't go to rebutting the things that he disagreed with in the article. This was just another way, once again, for the media to give this outfit a much louder voice than it actually deserves. Okay, and then the other thing that came out was a press release from the Commission on Decolonization. Now, it's interesting. Okay, let's take a short break and we'll come back to the Commission on Decolonization.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Do you feel like you're missing out on something? Make life more rewarding with Pacific Points. Earn and redeem points for free fuel at Shell, vouchers at Foodies, and bill rebates and free load at IT&E. You can even turn points into United Mileage Plus miles. Sign up today by visiting PacificPoints.com. Pacific Points, the rewards program that lets you do more, get more.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so I have the statement that the commission issued, the Commission on Chamorro Independence is what I call it, and I'm going to hold it up, and you could see it calls itself the Commission on Decolonization. That's it. All caps, bold type, decolonization. when the actual name is Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. So I pointed out, when I was speaking with the Rotary, I pointed out that really remarkable difference between self-determination and decolonization, that the island of Guam is a colony. The United States has the ability to decolonize it. It could say, effective 2 weeks from tomorrow, the United States withdraws its sovereign authority over the island of Guam. You're independent. Have fun, folks. It could, under Article 4, Section 3 of the Territories Clause. So the island of Guam or the territory of Guam could be decolonized. Okay, that's not the same thing as the self-determination of the Chamorro people. If you really study it, it could very well be, if somebody did a legitimate survey and you could poll the Chamorros, that 80% of them said, we don't want to decolonize. No one has ever asked that question. Does anybody here want to decolonize? So it could very well be that it would turn out that way. What would happen then? If nobody wanted to decolonize, what if they gave a decolonization party and nobody came, right? And I pointed out to the members of the Rotary, not all of whom were Chamorro, many of them were Tautauqua, and I said, this is important to you because all of us here in this room, all of you guys and I are living in a colony. And whether or not Guam is decolonized has a tremendous effect on us. So it's not something that's only important to one racial group, that is Chamorros. And that's why it's important to pay so much attention to it. Okay, so this from the Commission on Decolonization. By the way, I'm a little bit flattered here. I'm just a private citizen. I just went down and mumbled at the Rotary Club like I've done probably 20 different. I even once upon a time, probably 30 years ago, gave a short lecture on how to go about losing weight. And I can remember, if you're interested in some of the tidbits, Jose, here are some of the tips I passed along. You're really trying to limit how much you eat, right? And you're trying to be very particular about what you eat. And you go to somebody's party, somebody's fiesta, fandango, whatever. And what's the first thing that everybody says to you when they see you?
Go eat.
Go eat. So what you do is, as soon as you get there, you go grab a paper plate, put a little something on it, potato salad or something like that, and brush it off into the trash. Grab yourself an empty beer can and walk around with those things in your hand. So when that well-meaning mother of the house comes up to you and says, hey, now, Bob, go eat, now. You say, already, now? I'm finished? Oh, okay, thank you, Bob. Yeah, so I've given speeches about all different kinds of things.
No press release.
Yeah, and I have never been able to attract a press release from a government agency before. So, like Bavakwa says in his, quote, rebuttal about the news story that covered my Rotary speech, which really had little to do with the speech, I would wear that accolade like a badge, that I drew fire from the Commission on Decolonization, pointing out, however, that it's an interesting thing that we spend taxpayer money on a commission that sees that its job is to take shots at a member of the public who gives a speech at a Rotary Club. Yeah, that's part of their mission, apparently. Yeah, so it starts out like this. Genuine decolonization. Now, there must be non-genuine decolonization. Is not about being a separatist. And Chamorro self-determination is more than just a vote. Okay? Mr. Klitzkie is correct in his assertion that these two concepts are not synonymous. Well, he actually agreed with me. The decolonization and Chamorro self-determination are not synonymous. Self-determination is the free, uninfluenced expression of a people about what they want their political status to be. Decolonization, on the other hand, is much bigger. Decolonization requires each of us to take a critical look at our colonizers and ourselves. So, you know, I set myself up here for a selfie. I took a really critical look at myself. I didn't snap any pictures, but the only thing I concluded after taking a good critical look at myself is that I'm a lot older than I was 20 years ago. And the colonizer word is a pejorative, and I try not to use it any more than I try not to use the N word. It's not a nice thing to call someone a colonizer. Colony is a good word. One who colonizes is not a shameful pursuit, but the way the separatists here use it, it takes on a very bad connotation. So I didn't spend much time looking at our colonizer for that reason. Now, decolonization asks each of us to consider how our society and our government can change to better fit the needs of our people. Well, shouldn't it first ask us if any change is necessary? And if so, it says ask how our society and our government can change. Well, our government could change without decolonization. It depends on what the government does and what the government doesn't do. And now we go on, we lapse a little bit poetic here. It is a moment of truth. Decolonization is a moment of truth. I should have some music for this, Jose.
Do you want the happy music?
Decolonization. Decolonization. It's a moment of truth, coupled with a deep commitment to Anafa Malik, a cultural value that has sustained us for thousands of years. It's about recognizing that the indigenous people of Guam have been wronged. And like all free people, we deserve the right to decide our own political destiny with dignity, a right that has been withheld from us for almost 500 years. Now, once again, going back to the critical race theory, you start out with a historical event, and you paint that historical event in the most unfavorable light that you possibly can. A right that, let's see, it is about recognizing that the indigenous people of Guam have been wronged. And like all free people, we deserve the right to decide our own political destiny with dignity. A right that has been withheld from us for almost 500 years. So you paint the past the way you did. You judge it by today's manners, morals, and ethics. You pretend it happened just yesterday. And because of it, the colonizer is so irreparably flawed that it cannot be repaired. The only answer is separation. Critical race theory. Pointing out once again exactly what I said. Going on, simply put, self-determination is the Chamorro people's expressed will via plebiscite of what type of truly self-governing status they want for their island. Nobody else counts. It has to be done on the basis of oppressor and oppressed. The oppressed, of course, are Chamorros. Everybody else is the oppressor, especially Americans. Those of us who hail from the mainland are the oppressors. Decolonization occurs after that vote, when Guam transitions to a political status with true self-government and is no longer a possession of another country. So in other words, we have this Chamorro self-determination plebiscite, and we're shoehorned into this trick. It's kind of like the three-shell game. Have you ever seen that, Jose?
Three-shell Monty.
3 shells and a pea under one of the shells. You put $1 down on the table, and the dealer manipulates them around. You point to the shell where the pea is. If you guess right, he gives you another $1. If you guess wrong, you lose. That's exactly what it is. Or you can do it with cards. You know, you can have an ace and a couple of suit cards and do the same thing. So it's a classic heads I win, tails you lose, because of the 3 choices, only one of them is a possibility under Article 1, Section 3 of the Article 4, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution, and that is independence. The other 2 are really just to kind of shoehorn you into the only one that's a possibility. He leaves off any status freely consented to by a vote of the people living in the territory. He leaves that off. Integration with the mother country, he leaves that off. Or they leave it off. And it's the separatists that have maneuvered this whole thing around to make people think, well, only 3 choices and one of them is independence. So what you do is first of all, you ask one racial group on the island which one of the 3 they like. And then after that, Guam transitions to a political status of true self-governance. In other words, how the Chamorro people vote is what's going to happen to the island of Guam or the territory of Guam. That's what it's about. So this is, according to this release here, it's not an advisory vote. It's not a highly structured public opinion poll that they're looking for. It's to actually change the status of the island. And I suppose if we were to press Melvin Wanpat here, he'd say, well, once the vote is in, then we go to Congress and say, look, this is how the indigenous people of Guam want their island to be governed. They want to be independent. So you must declare Guam independent and withdraw American sovereignty from it. That's basically what he's saying.
But this is going to be mandated by a government that was voted by people other than Chamorros as well?
No, this will be just the Chamorros. The Chamorros have what they want. They have the plebiscite. They decide on independence.
Which is fine.
Whatever. And then they lobby the U.S. Congress and say, you must declare Guam independent.
Under what authority?
Under the authority of Article 4, Section 3, which says, once again, the Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory belonging.
Oh, I meant under what authority is this vote brought to Congress?
The fact that it's what the indigenous people want. Now, that's only 37% of the people living on the island. But if you understand critical race theory, they're the oppressed.
Yeah.
See, and nobody else counts.
I'm trying to understand the logic of how they're going to convince the rest of the non-37% that this is fine.
It's not necessary because they're not indigenous.
Got it.
They all moved here from somewhere else, right? Except the ones that happen to be born here. And they could have been born somewhere else. I mean, that's the logic of it. Then the release goes on to say, although Mr. Klitzkie may believe he is unaffected by the very real consequences of being an unincorporated territory, how could he ever get an idea like that I think I'm unaffected? I've probably spent more time talking about living in an unincorporated territory and the effects thereof than anybody else on this island, including Tina Rose Munya Barnes. Then he goes on to say, the reality for the people of Guam is that we are second-class citizens. And, of course, we're not.
But we're back to the people of Guam.
Yeah, not the Chamorros,
Okay.
the people of Guam.
Just trying to keep this straight.
Yeah. Well, you really don't have to, because the only ones that really count are the indigenous people, the Chamorros. Yeah. And I've been through this second-class citizens thing, which is catchy, and it's classic demagoguery, and it's also meaningless. Let's take a short break here, and we'll come back to the Commission on Chamorro Independence.
Hafaday, this is Congressman St. Nicholas. Your congressional office would like to remind you that pandemic unemployment assistance is set to expire on September 6th of this year. We encourage the people of Guam to seek out active employment as much as possible, as jobs continue to remain limited, and we want to prevent hardship for our people at the conclusion of the PUA program. Thank you, and see to us, Mahase.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Circle K brings you the G-Dog. Get ready for a succulent and flavorful street hot dogs made famous in New York City. These dogs are made with 100% all beef and cooked in a delicious blend of spices for a plump, juicy hot dog experience that's bursting with flavor. Visit your nearest participating Circle K and dig in on the best hot dog experience on island. The G-Dog, served from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Available at Anigua, Denado, and Ocean Vista Circle K locations only. Circle K. Hey, take it easy.
So this release goes on to say, although Mr. Klitzkie may believe he is unaffected by the very real consequences of being in an unincorporated territory, the reality for the people of Guam is that we are second-class citizens. Just not so. If you are a citizen of the United States, you're a citizen of the United States. It doesn't matter if you're on Guam, in Alaska, or wherever you are. You have all the same rights, privileges, and benefits as every other citizen of the United States. And living in a modern-day colony. Okay, well, it is a modern-day colony. And then Wampat goes on to say, being held back from achieving the full extent of our political, cultural, and economic development. Yeah, we're really being held back from our economic development. If Guam were only independent, it would be as prosperous as Monte Carlo. We continue to bear the inequity of our political status. There's that word again, equity, the inequity of our political status. The territorial clause and insular cases, which determined that only certain parts of the U.S. Constitution would be extended to the citizens of the territories. Yeah, like, for instance, the revenue clauses are not extended to the territories. That means that we get to keep our income tax, we get the Section 30 money, We are the only tax holiday in the United States because of the Gura qualifying certificates. We collect our own customs instead of having the feds do it. And on and on and on. So because of the insular cases, we have much more flexibility than a state could ever have. And the parts of the Constitution that don't apply are, as I mentioned, the revenue clauses. The Bill of Rights is applied to the island of Guam since 1968. And before that, the text of each of the Bill of Rights was included in the Organic Act of 1950. So this is another deception here. Oh, you don't have constitutional rights on the island. Well, you do. And he goes on to say the Jones Act, which unfairly raises the cost of goods in territories to protect U.S. shipping interests. Well, it's the same Jones Act that applies to all the rest of the country, except for the Northern Marianas, which probably is the kind of situation we could do ourselves if we get off our butts and try instead of going round and round on this self-determination, critical race theory merry-go-round that we're on. Our lack of voice in negotiations that affect us as the Compacts of Free Association or the agreement between Japan and the U.S. that negotiated the terms of the military buildup in Guam. So if Guam were independent, the United States would set Guam down at that table immediately, right? And Japan would probably send an entire diplomatic retinue to Guam to develop trade with Guam because we export so much to Japan. You know, this whole thing, there is an argument buried in here. You really have to be almost a minor to find it. But they camouflage it with silliness like this, all in the name of inequity. If anyone still thinks that status quo should be an option for Guam, ask yourself some basic questions. Then we use the device of the rhetorical question. What is the point of self-determination if we don't want our status to change? Well, if the Chamorros determined that they didn't want their status to change, that would be self-determination, Melvin Wonpet. Why have generations of Chamorros fought for this right if only for Guam's political status to remain the same? Now, there is a logical flaw called begging the question, and it goes like this. Herman, how long ago did you stop beating up your wife? And of course, that puts Herman in a situation where he can't come up with a good answer. He can't say, well, I never stopped beating my wife, because he never started beating his wife, right? That's called begging the question. And here we have it again. Why have generations of Chamorros fought for this right? They have, and we know that because if this right is only for Guam's political status to remain the same, it's begging the question, and it goes back to number one. If the majority of the people living on this island don't want to become independent, that is self-determination. If a minority of the people on this island do want independence, is that self-determination, or is that the rule by a racial minority? If decolonization is so bad, then why have so many nations around the world chosen to decolonize? Well, some of them didn't have any choice. They kind of got kicked out. And why are there only 17 non-self-governing territories left in the world? The reason for a lot of them is like American Samoa. The last thing American Samoa wants is to be the independent nation of American Samoa. They've been through that before. They didn't want to merge with Western Samoa. They didn't want to merge with Hawaii. They're just happy the way they are. Okay, let's take a short break here. After the break, I'm going to finish up on this, and then I've got another Joe hanging on in the green room.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
An hours-long standoff turns deadly. I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. 2 Kern County Sheriff's deputies were shot, and one is dead after a shooting at a home in Wasco, California.
Right now, we know that there was a standoff with multiple shots fired at this point. We've heard a couple hundred. We also know that there is a hostage situation involved as well. The mayor of Wasco has now tweeted out that 2 Kern County Sheriff's officers have been shot, and one has been killed in action.
KBAK reporter Stacey Rasmussen, and we're hearing from authorities now that 2 more people were found inside the house suffering from gunshot wounds. And a House panel will start looking into the January 6th Capitol attack this week. Fox's Jared Halpern has more from Washington.
The House Select Committee on January 6th holds its first hearing tomorrow with testimony from 2 U.S. Capitol police officers and 2 D.C. Metro police officers who all responded to the riot. Republicans named to that panel by GOP leader Kevin McCarthy are not participating after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi nixed 2 GOP picks, citing concerns over words and actions by Congressman Jim Jordan and Jim Banks. Senate leaders, meantime, could move forward on a $1 trillion infrastructure measure that stalled last week after a failed procedural vote.
And this as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has added another Republican to the House Select Committee investigation on the January 6th Capitol riot.
As many had speculated, the Speaker reached out to Illinois Republican Representative Adam Kinzinger to join fellow Republican Liz Cheney on the House Select Committee. In accepting, Kinzinger said in a statement that he pledged to be part of a serious, clear-eyed, nonpartisan approach to get to the truth of why the riot happened. Speaker Pelosi, in her own statement, said Kinzinger, a military veteran, brings great patriotism to the committee. Kinzinger will be seated for the first hearing of the committee tomorrow.
Fox's Grinnell Scott. America is listening to Fox News.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Is it COVID-19 or just a summer cold? A new report from the CDC says it's seeing a resurgence of some other out-of-season viruses.
The CDC says that levels of the flu and other non-COVID respiratory viruses were at historic lows last year, but their new report says now we're seeing other viruses cropping up in seasons where they aren't usually seen. One example is RSV, a respiratory virus that causes colds in adults but can be dangerous for babies. It was muted last year and early this year, but cases of RSV started to increase in April, which is unusual. It normally peaks in January. Health measures like masks that were used to slow COVID spread probably helped suppress viruses last year, and they made a comeback when restrictions were lifted. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
And M. Night Shyamalan's Old easily won a slower weekend at the box office, while the G.I. Joe pick Snake Eyes lived up to its name. Universal on Sunday said that Old, which cost $18 million to make, grossed an estimated $16.5 million. Paramount's Snake Eyes, a G.I. Joe origin story, brought in an estimated $13.4 million in ticket sales against an $88 million production budget. Plus, the month of August will feature a number of free concerts in New York. Fox's Michelle Polino reports.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio announced a series of 4 free concerts leading up to the big Clive Davis-produced concert in New York Central Park to celebrate the Big Apple's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. The series will kick off August 16th at Orchard Beach in the Bronx, followed by a concert at former home of the Staten Island Yankees August 17th, then on August 19th at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, and August 20th at Forest Hill Stadium in Queens. The 4 free concerts will be part of what the mayor called Homecoming Week. They lead up to the August 21st A-list event on the Great Lawn that features Bruce Springsteen, Paul Simon, and Jennifer Hudson. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Mezcla, read all about it. Check out Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tucumán for lunch. Serving up some savory seafood specials such as spicy garlic shrimp, candied salmon, or better yet, the local favorite, snapper or shrimp escabeche. Available only during lunch hours. Make sure to come down and try these tasty specials and more. Call 969-2652 for more info or to make a reservation. Located at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tucumán, Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. A true taste of Guam.
Hafade, this is Congressman Nicholas. Your congressional office would like to remind you that pandemic unemployment assistance is set to expire on September 6th of this year. We encourage the people of Guam to seek out active employment as much as possible, as jobs continue to remain limited, and we want to prevent hardship for our people at the conclusion of the PUA program. Thank you, and see to us, Mahase.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Do you have what it takes to rock a mic? Then open mic at Slippery Fish awaits you. No matter your skill or skill level, if you spit spoken word, sing, or rap, then this is your chance to break it out. New Wave Studio invites you every Thursday night. The Slippery Fish stage is yours if you know how to work it. DJ Heartless will lay down the beat so you can bust your flow. Your favorite Bud Family buckets are ice cold and on special, along with Grey Goose, Bombay Sapphire, Bacardi, and Evan Williams cocktail. Sing, rap, or speak your heart out every Thursday at Slippery Fish's open mic night. Budweiser reminds you that responsibility matters.
So here we are, back with Tall Tales, and a press release from the Commission on Decolonization that is titled, Commission on Decolonization Addresses and Corrects Misleading, Uninformed Remarks on Decolonization and Self-Determination. And this references the speech that I gave at the Rotary Club on Thursday, which was reported in the Daily News on Friday and on PNC News this morning. It'll be on PNC News tonight. And this is the only part of what I said at the Rotary that this release actually deals with. It goes like this. In response to Robert Klitzkie's misleading, uninformed remarks before the Rotary Club on Guam, the Commission on Decolonization releases the following statement. Genuinely, decolonization is not about being a separatist and Chamorro self-determination is more than just a vote. okay? And then he says, Mr. Klitzkie is correct in his assertion that these two concepts are not synonymous. So he agrees with what I said. I made quite a point out of the fact that our news media gaslight the public by treating Chamorro's self-determination as to dealing with the political status of Guam, of decolonization. So he agrees with one thing that I said. All the rest of his release is just pap from his pen, repeating the same old tripe of this Chamorro independence movement masquerading as a government agency.
Maybe there's a part two.
Maybe
the PDN has to finish the rest of it later.
Maybe. And I should point out that what it really is here, the way the thing is structured, is that it's a government agency using your taxpayer funds to beat the drums for an independent Guam. When you scrape the paint and varnish off it, that's all it really is. So he agrees with me, and then he goes on to use this press release for more propaganda. And, of course, the media will cover it because he put it out there. And then he goes on to say, if you believe that we really are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's, of course, from the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States, which I think is probably illegal to recite in certain venues now in the United States that lean hard to the left. He says, then why do unincorporated territories still exist? We must remember that an unincorporated territory is to be owned by, not a part of the United States. Well, what this suggests to me is you don't understand the meaning of the word nation. Once again, a nation is not synonymous with a country. It's two different things. And we had someone from American Samoa here on the show, the representative, the territorial delegate from American Samoa to the Congress, whose name is Amata Radewagen, who freely signs up for being part of the American nation, even though the people of American Samoa are not citizens. They're nationals. So it's pretty easy to be a part of the American nation. In fact, we should all be thankful that we are a part of the American nation, living in an unincorporated territory as we do, since it's going to be very difficult for Guam to become a state with only 170,000 people. So we have the best of the American nation right here, rather the rule of law, the whole thing, even though we are in unincorporated territory. He goes on to say, Chamorro's self-determination is more than just a vote on a political status preference, which is kind of what they led us to believe up until the Davis case. It's just a vote. We're just saying what we like. It's nothing more than that. It's only advisory. Then he goes on to say, and I think I need some music here again, Jose. It is an expression of human dignity and the exercise of our freedom to make a choice for ourselves. Do the indigenous people of Guam not deserve the same dignity afforded to people all over the world? You know, I know exactly how he feels. I remember, I think I was early in my early 20s one time, and I woke up and I said, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have a voice in the self-determination of the United States. It doesn't matter what I want. It's not going to happen. No dignity for us. You know, the word dignity is an easy one to toss around. but it doesn't mean what you want it to mean here, Melvin Wonpat. Dignity is something that you reflect as a person. If you are a dignified person, people will say he conducted himself with dignity. And I can't bestow dignity upon you, Melvin Wonpat, nor can anyone else. And by the way, you're sorely in need of it. I remember, it may have been 10 years ago when General Bice was in charge of the initiative to relocate the Marines here. And he gave a speech at the gymnasium in Jigo. And the format was such that other people could also take the microphone and speak. And Melvin Wonpat took the microphone and did a chant, kind of like a rap. I was so embarrassed. I felt like going up to General Bice and saying, General, I'm really sorry you had to sit through this. This is not, the people of Guam. This is just one aberrant individual who at that time certainly didn't understand the meaning of the word dignity. I don't know if by the looks of this, I don't think he understands it now. He sees it as a way of throwing it around in that critical race theory framework because, what the Spanish did to us in let's see, what year was it? 1567.
Around there.
Yeah. And when the United States won the Spanish-American War, all of these horrible things, now you have to give us dignity. As though we're all supposed to go to Amazon Prime and say, ship these folks a box of dignity, as though that's how it works. If the United States wants to be a beacon of freedom, democracy, and here we go with the critical race theory again, and truly wants to reconcile with a history riddled with racism and colonial oppression, then this is not only our inalienable right. And how is this right inalienable? The folks down in American Samoa ceded their territory to the United States, knowing it was a one-way street. I guess it wasn't inalienable for them. And it's never been inalienable. It's a nice sounding word, and it comes out of the Declaration of Independence, of course. He goes on to say, then this is not only our inalienable right, but a moral and international obligation that the United States has to the people of Guam to support Chamorro self-determination. Yeah. Sentimental, emotional.
I feel really naive here in saying this,
Yeah.
this next thing or question. But at what point is a decision that has been made is a decision and not a reason for a future generation to move the goalposts? Because I thought decisions have been made, but it just does not right for the generation. Is that what they're saying then? Because this is different then. It's not self-determination. It is a separatist movement.
It is.
Not unlike those in the States who want to secede from the country.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether they're Chamorro, Asian, Black.
Southerners. Yeah.
People from the foothills of Kentucky.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
There's no difference. There's no difference. And, of course, in order for this to fly, you have to really go back and debunk the people like F.B. Leon Guerrero, B.J. Bordallo, Carlos Taitano, who in the late 40s wanted an Organic Act, wanted citizenship, and took action to achieve both of those things. And as Simon Sanchez points out, there's a famous picture of Harry Truman signing the bill that enacted the Organic Act of Guam, Carlos Taitno standing behind him in the photo op. And Simon says he was not whispering in Harry Truman's ear, Harry, don't sign it, don't sign it. So, you know, all of these, the time will come when all of this will have to be debunked because these people were not woke enough to understand that whatever happened then, that was then, this is now. And now the whole critical race theory approach to the sovereignty of the island is what we actually have to embrace. And if you don't, then, you know, you don't understand. It's like this press release here, obviously, Mr. Klitzkie may believe he's unaffected by the very real consequences of living in an unincorporated territory. So you would think that GPA would go out of business because no one would need electric lights anymore. With gaslighting so prevalent in government agencies, who needs electric power? Okay, I've got another Joe online, and I also have Kellis online, who wants to talk about Japanese reparations and the U.S. Congress. But let's go to another Joe first. Go ahead, another Joe.
Hey, goodbye. So, this it is editorial, I guess you could call it. It's a lot of information there to unpack, but I'll start out by saying, trying not to have stage right here, sorry. All right, so the first point was, I don't know if you can still hear me. It says that you're misleading, but you're on the radio like 5 days a week. So, I mean, if people really thought you were misleading them, they would call in and tell you you're misleading them, and they would give examples, and you could defend yourself. So that's not happening at the moment. And then he's talking about decolonization is not being separatist, but they're not opposed to being independent. So, you know, oops, well, we fell into being independent. You know, I don't know about that. I think it's stronger feeling that they're doing this because they want to be separate. That's just my first impression. And the issue of Chamorro self-determination being more than just the vote. Well, isn't that kind of the point of the plebiscite? They were particular in who they wanted to vote. They wanted Chamorro vote. So it obviously it was about a vote. It wasn't important to them how and who was voting. So, I think if anyone's trying to confuse people, they're kind of confusing people about it. I think that's the point I'm trying to make here. But it's definitely worth a dialogue. What do you think of Kebab so far? What is it?
Well, I think you're right that there is a certain, I use the word gaslight, there is a certain attempt to convince people of something that just isn't the way it is. And that's to move the decolonization thing forward. And then one of my criticisms of the whole independence movement, which is what they're really talking about, nothing else. No one has come forward and said, this is what we plan for an independent Guam. Guam's going to be independent, and the streets will be paved with gold, and even if it rains, you're never going to get wet, and if you drop a glass of water, it won't fall. Everything will be perfect, but no one has told us exactly how it's going to go. And frankly, I would not look forward to it. And I've spoken with others about that, and the answer is usually something, well, the Chamorro people in Afamaulik, and, the welcoming of strength. I just don't buy that because, when this Chamorro independence gang put together a vote, the first thing they did was decide that I couldn't vote. One of the most important things in a democracy, saying, sorry, buddy, you can't vote. You're not the right color. So if that's the way we start to get to independence, what's it going to be like once Guam is independent? I just don't think it's going to be a very I don't think Guam is going to be a very good place to live for anybody.
Yeah, it's catchy. The feeling about it. And one last thought, Bob, is Communist Beijing eyeing us makes me kind of nervous. I would much rather have the U.S. flag on Guam as a standard than a communist, atheist Beijing's infiltrating. Thanks for your time, McCall. Just keep listening.
Thank you for calling, Joe. Good to talk to you. And let's see, I've got somebody else chiming in here in the green room. It's Frenchie. Okay, so we'll go to Kellis and then on to Frenchie. Good afternoon, Kellis.
Good afternoon, Judge. I just had this idea because I've been listening for the past few days. And so I'm saying, the power of the Guam legislature is incredible, especially because we're, notwithstanding, is so we can legalize a Schedule II drug that is illegal from the federal, right? We can get rid of the statute of limitations on sexual predators and stuff like that. So I'm saying, hey, how about if the legislature writes a law, notwithstanding, that we could sue the Japanese for war reparations, even though the federal government, said that they did not have to pay. Because, if we get a couple of notwithstandings in there, I think we could get, billions or maybe even $1 trillion from the Japanese. What do you think?
Well, it's an interesting idea, Kellis, but I think if you bounce that off the vice speaker, Tina Rose Munya Barnes, she'd say we couldn't do that because of the insular cases.
Well, but as long as you put notwithstanding.
Yeah. Notwithstanding any law or treaty to the contrary,
right.
Any person who was alive before July 21, 1944 has
is personally responsible.
Has the absolute right to file suit against the government of Japan in the courts of Guam.
Let's see. No, not only that, and their heirs.
And their heirs, yeah. Well, I'm thinking...
and their heirs.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I wouldn't get a dime. So I'm looking at getting $1 billion for myself personally.
Okay, well, if you had $1 billion, would you sponsor Tall Tales, Kellis?
You know I would. I'd make sure I at least put in my 10 cents every week.
Well, okay. Well, I'm on your side then. I'm rooting for you, Kellis.
But so what do you think of the possibilities of a couple of notwithstandings, et cetera, that we could sue the Japanese government for war reparations?
Well, the old saying is that you can sue anybody for anything. And the way you do it is you poke some papers through the window with a filing fee, and the papers will be accepted. So you can sue anybody for it. That doesn't mean that you can recover anything on your lawsuit. So I think, yeah, you could do it, and you could sue. Your chances of recovering would be somewhere between.
Yeah, but like I said, if the law says that, notwithstanding that any forgiveness on the part of the United States government would be dissolved and act like it never happened. It's just like, so this statute of limitations are retrofitted, back to the 18th century.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll put it in my too hard file for now, Kellis.
Okay. I just thought, you could pull out your Law and Order bumper sticker and you'd come up with a real fast that, yes, this would work. As long as we got, all the senators and the governors sign off on it, we could do it.
I don't know if we could ever get Tello to sign off on it because we'd have to have permission to use her name.
You just used her name.
I did. My bad.
You did. Okay, Judge. I just, I was just hoping that we could get some money because, because the federal government is about to turn off the spigot. So we need money coming from elsewhere. And I figure Japan. because we
Okay.
haven't hit them for billions.
We'll give you high marks for creativity. Thanks for calling, Gillis.
I think Japan's going to give us those billions in Tokyo bananas and Royce chocolate.
Probably.
I'm for it.
Yeah. All right, let's head for Wrigley Field. When we come back, we'll leave Wrigley Field and we'll go straight to France and entertain Frenchie.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Chili's is pairing up premium entrees with 2-in-1 entree selections starting at $19.99. Indulge in mouth-watering combos like the sirloin and ribs combo, the ribeye and jalapeno sausage combo, or the savory sirloin and ancho salmon combo. All served with delicious mashed potatoes. Dine in today and enjoy the best of both worlds flavor experience with Chili's 2-in-1 entree selections. Available for a limited time. Chili's on the second floor of the Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, savor the moment.
Okay, so here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark. 2 more innings to go to the end of this game, first game of a new week. And I peeked at Facebook here during the 7th inning stretch, and one of our premier tailgaters, Pamela Duvall, really nailed it. And this is what Pam says. Actually, before all this self-determination stuff showed up, everyone was pretty okay with things until they told us otherwise. And of course, that's the classic Marxist approach, that people are not going to change the situation they have if they think that it's not as good as it could be or something else would be better. And that's the reason that the separatists here have to debunk where we are. All of this talk about the lack of dignity and, second-class citizens, trying to convince you that you really are in a bad, bad situation. And once you buy into that, then the solution is, well, if Guam were independent, we wouldn't and you wouldn't have these problems. And you can imagine how that's going to work out. You wouldn't have the problems we have now. You'd look back on the problems we have now as the good old days. But that's the actual technique, Pam, is to debunk the current situation for the classic Marxists before the Frankfurt School gang came along. It's class warfare, that the bourgeoisie are taking all of the wealth from your labor, and they're leaving you with nothing. So workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. Chamorros of Guam, unite and go for independence. You have one thing to gain, dignity. And all of this other propaganda that it comes out is paid for with your taxpayers' money by a government agency that calls itself the Decolonization Commission, but it's really for the exercise of Chamorro self-determination. And when you scrape the paint and varnish off it, it's nothing but a lobby for an independent Guam. I got a feeling that you agree with me, right, Frenchie?
Yeah, I'm going to go even further than you do.
Okay.
Unfortunately, people don't learn history anymore, so that's, I guess we have to teach it from the pulpit. In 1961 in Moscow, the International Comintern meeting, so it was the International Communist Party, and it was controlled by the USSR at the time under Nikita Khrushchev. They decided to move away from the struggle of classes, the workers against the bourgeoisie and so on, and move the struggle to decolonization, racial inequalities, and the anti-slavery reparation. And of course, move forward a few years thanks to all the useful idiots in the academic world. We have arrived there. And Khrushchev, if you remember, when he was at the UN, knocking on his pulpit with his shoe, telling us he was going to bury us, and basically that was his plan, was to destroy the West by introducing termites on the inside until the construction would not be able to hold on its own. And what we have starting in the 60s is the acceleration of decolonization from, the few colonial powers that were still there. So there was France, England, Portugal, Spain, Holland, who else? A few other countries, but that was about it. The movement went on. That was 60 years ago, and if you look at the results, the last pound to fall was South Africa with the end of apartheid. And if you look at what is going on in South Africa in the last 3 weeks, it's basically civil wars. It is Africa going back to pre-colonized world, which is tribe against tribe, leader against leader. And now they are looting every stores that are open. They are fighting each other, shooting each other in the streets. People are getting dragged out of their houses and hung from street lights. It is just what happens when you have the lights of Bevacqua, Underwood, and all those pseudo-Marxists who have never worked a goddamn day in their life, but have always lived off the back of taxpayers. So Underwood, if you look at it, he claims to be Chamorro, but he's the grandson of the postmaster of the colonizer, right? He's lived a great life for 10 years under the federal taxpayer, and then when he was president of the UOG, he lived another 10 years under at the expense of Guam's taxpayer, and now he's having his little cottage industry. Those people don't give a damn about the Chamorros. They only give a damn about how they're going to profit from it. And that's what they do. They profit from it. They have created, under Underwood's leadership, about 30 little non-profit groups that are now going to ask money from the businesses around Guam. And if you saw, it's usually small article in the paper. Like you had A&K, which is a very good company here on Guam. They've been here for over 100 years. Is giving money to groups like Duck, whatever the name is, that little that is supposed to promote historical research and all those kind of things. They're giving them thousands of dollars. And what we see here on Guam is what is happening with Black Lives Matter in the U.S., where you have Fortune 500 companies that pay money to those groups, which is nothing else than racketeering. And you have one party, the Democrats, that are aiding and abetting this because they think they can keep power by playing with fire. And it's a very dangerous thing. We are coming at a time where, people, for their own benefits, are going around the powder keg with lit torches, and they don't understand that the whole thing can explode. And if you don't understand the danger for Guam, just look at Rhodesia, which became Zimbabwe, which was the richest country in Africa, right? And where people have to scrap grass from their neighbor's yard in order to survive from eating. And look at what's happening in South Africa, which was the most developed country in Africa. And it's now a basket case after barely 20 years of socialism and tribalism and corruption, because this is what it is. And if you want to look more in the Pacific, you have the history of those islands that became independent, started mining. Everybody was getting a car every year and everything, and now they are back to the Stone Age. And this is what those people are bringing. But they are not going to pay the price. Those people never pay the price. They never pay the consequences of their policies. Like you said, they are using taxpayer money to promote dangerous policies, and at the same time to live off the back of the taxpayer. Those people are nothing but leeches. They are parasites. And those parasites are living off the blood of the Guamanian, included of the Chamorros. And of course you have enough useful idiots that go for it and believe those false prophets, because that's what they are. And if you look on top of it, for most Chamorros that are still very Catholic, those people are anti-Catholic. They are anti-Christian in general. They are pushing back for Stone Age goddess and gods and spirits and all those things, and they are very dangerous. They try to look as, you know, the intellectual. Look at Bevacqua posing as an intellectual. He's not even a second-rate intellectual. He's a third-rate intellectual. The guy is limited. He basically is like Biden. He plagiarized half of the stuff he's writing. It's none of the stuff. He copies what he sees in other places, put it back, change a few words, and then he puts a column. And same thing with his speeches. And Underwood, you know, I'm sorry to say, but Ray always invites Uncle Robert in the morning because he wants to have another, like, you know, conservatives are open to have other public opinions. And Robert is using this to build his reputation, like he's a nice, good old guy. He's not. He's a dangerous fanatic. And that's my take.
You know, Frenchie, if when you called up, if you just didn't beat around the bush so much and came out and told us what you really thought.
Yeah, but you know, I'm always trying to stay neutral.
You're always trying to be so diplomatic, aren't you?
Yeah, but that's what it is. And you know, the fact that they are going after you for your speech at the Rotary with taxpayer money people, right?
Sure.
Shows that you have hit pretty close, and it's very uncomfortable for them because you're calling their BS for what it is. It is horse patoot. They know it, and so they have to keep diverting in order for people and to say, oh, well, you know, Bob is a white guy anyway, so we cannot trust him, you know, and forgetting your history on this island and how much you gave this island and how much you work in this island, how close you are to the Chamorro community. Actually, you're closer to the Chamorro community than any of those idiots are. And that's why they are so venomous and so two-faces about this thing. They have to hit back at you because you're showing that the emperor has no clothes. And that's what it is. So, okay. Thank you for giving me time to vent.
You know, Frenchie, it's really hard to argue with someone who seems to be so well informed. Thanks for chiming in so long.
All right.
Yeah. So
there might be another press release tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, if we do have a government department of rebuttal of citizens, right? If a citizen says something that's wrong, there is a government agency that will come out and set him straight, right?
No dust up on the Rotary Club, but I think Tall Tales has a bigger audience than you did on Thursday.
Could be. Could very well be.
This should have been the forum they criticized.
Yeah. Yeah, and if they want to, Facebook, 888 Talk, it's pretty easy. Lots of people do it. Okay, so I think we'll put the committee, the Commission on Chamorro Independence aside. I got a feeling we'll be back to it tomorrow. And we'll go to Asian Americans versus critical race theory. And this is something that I got out of Fox News media. Success of Asian Americans debunks critical race theory. Quote, inconvenient minority author says. Asian Americans never needed politics to succeed in this country, Kenny Zhu told Fox News. Author Kenny Zhu explains why Asian Americans are an inconvenient minority for the left's racial agenda. The author of a new book feels Asian Americans are an inconvenient minority to the liberal media because as their community succeeds based on merit alone, they debunk the critical race theory narrative that opportunities of non-whites are limited because of systematic racism in the United States. Asian Americans prove that critical race theory is not true, cannot be true, Zhu told Fox News. Asian Americans never needed politics to succeed in this country. They just want to be treated based on merit. Zhu's book, An Inconvenient Minority, The Attack on Asian American Excellence and the Fight for Meritocracy, examines how Ivy League universities such as Harvard discriminate against qualified Asian Americans to maintain a particular racial makeup, which is what it's all about nowadays, and their student body. He found that race-based admission processes designed to push diversity, of course we know what diversity means nowadays, at elite institutions crush the narrative being pushed by much of the mainstream media. If America is still a systemically racist country for minorities, how come they've allowed Asian Americans to overtake whites in education level and socioeconomic status? Asian Americans get higher test scores. The inconvenient minority author says that Asian Americans face plenty of problems, but doesn't buy into CRT's theory that systemic racism limits opportunities for all non-white Americans. The whole idea of critical race theory is developed by saying, hey, our laws, our society, our structures are inherently stacked against people of color, Zhu said. Americans prove that even in the face of whatever racial narratives that you're in, you can still succeed, that this country is the land of opportunity. Zhu has been an outspoken critic of critical race theory and enlisted James Lindsay, who wrote the best-selling book, Critical Theories, How Activist Scholarship Made Everything About Race, Gender, and Identity, and why this harms everybody. Well, here we haven't got the gender and identity yet, but I suppose it's on its way. Lindsay wrote that critical race theory denigrates the key American virtue that a combination of talent and hard work can result in genuine earned success. This denigration of merit leads it not only to repudiate the fundamental premise of America, but also that has a disproportionate impact on one racial group in the United States more than any other, Asian Americans. Mainstream media hosts and pundits such as MSNBC's Joy Reid have fiercely pushed back on critical race theory's critics. although there is apparent disagreement as to the extent of its influence over U.S. educators. Well, we have an idea of how much influence it has over Guam's, two of Guam's educators, right? Many claim it's not even being taught in schools and also erupt over the threat of laws that would ban it from being taught outright. Zhu feels the media has an agenda to promote the self-victimization of minorities. Yeah. But Asian Americans are often forgotten because their education rates and economic status don't fit the narrative. I think it's deliberate. The reason why is because Asian Americans are the inconvenient minority. Critical race theory really doesn't have any room for Asians. As a result, Zhu thinks Asian American parents should be concerned if their children are being taught critical race theory in school. He feels the families of most successful Asian Americans came to the country without any privilege, but thrive because of meritocracy. If you're an immigrant parent of a child in America, you know the only way that you see forward to your child having a better life is to train them to be talented, to have merit so they can compete in American meritocracy. And critical race theory, says that meritocracy is racist, doing away with standardized tests, telling kids that, this penchant for getting the right answer in arithmetic is racist, that mathematics is racist, and on and on. CRT undermines the entire concept that formulated the ability for Asians to succeed in America. Z pointed to Vietnamese Americans as an essential example of why a meritocracy is far from racist, because so many of them escaped communism and arrived in the United States with anything but an opportunity. Many of them can't even speak the language but can still manage to thrive, often starting small businesses such as nail salons and restaurants. Anybody in the media who subscribes so readily or easily to the racial victimization narrative should really grapple with the story of Vietnamese Americans for a long time. They should go into their studio and mosey around this issue for a long time to how that could possibly comport with their ideology. Zhu was passionately against critical race theory before it emerged as a hot-button topic, and examined Vice President Harris's record as a California lawmaker when she was chosen as then-candidate Biden's running mate. She supported race preferences in admission and was one of the leading proponents of critical race theory policies in the country. I realized, oh my gosh, getting elected, this is going to get worse. I devoted a portion of my book to talking about it. He sees widespread hypocrisy from the chattering class of progressive and Democrat leaders alike who push inclusiveness and claim to fight back against hate while simultaneously working against the Asian American community. You go to some of these school board meetings where Asians are fighting for their rights to be treated equally in the admission process. In high schools in New York City, Asian Americans were fighting for the right to be treated equally in admissions process at Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, specialized high schools. And then you have these liberal Upper East Side parents, that these are the most liberal, blue-loving, chattering class of people you ever think of, and they're just indulging in these anti-Asian stereotypes. There is this fear that Asian Americans are taking over all the best public schools and opportunities. Zhu is the president of the nonprofit Color Us United, an organization created to speak out against those who want to divide America. And it goes back again to what Pam said. Actually, before all this self-determination stuff showed up, everyone was pretty okay with things until they told us otherwise. Yeah. Okay, so let's head for Churchill Downs.
Starting August 1st, pandemic unemployment assistance claimants must start searching for work to remain eligible for PUA benefits. 3 work searches a week are required. Work searches include registering on HireGuam.com, meeting with employers, submitting resumes and applications, and attending job fairs. Only a few are exempt from the work search requirement. This includes those working reduced hours, those in training programs, and self-employed individuals. Remember, PUA ends September the 4th. Now is the time. Let's rebuild our workforce. For more information, go to dol.guam.gov.
Hey, big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
Okay, here we are in the home stretch on Tall Tales. This is an older news story that ran in a publication called Defense News. And it's titled, House Appropriators Fund Hawaii Missile Defense Radar, but Cut Dollars for Guam. House and Senate lawmakers have been pushing to boost the Missile Defense Agency's fiscal 2022 budget, and they continue to advocate for increased missile defense in the Indo-Pacific theater. But House appropriators plan to cut funding to enhance missile defense. In the House Appropriations Committee Fiscal 22 spending bill, the Missile Defense Agency's $78.3 million request for missile defense for Guam took a $15.9 million hit due to unjustified growth, whatever that means. The agency requested an additional $40 million to procure long lead items for the architecture in Guam as well. But according to a wish list sent to Congress from the command, more funding to the tune of $231.7 million on top of what the MDA requested is needed to move at the desired pace. The list also included for funding for Homeland Defense Radar for Hawaii. House appropriators did approve $75 million in funding for HDRH, which the agency chose not to fund in this budget request. In hearings over the past several months, lawmakers across the defense community advocating for providing for Hawaii the added protection. House appropriators did not provide a more detailed explanation regarding the cut to Guam's missile defense. Yet the MDA has not finalized or unveiled its plan on how it will enhance missile defense capability on Guam. MDA Director Vice Admiral John Hill said the plan is to use mature capabilities, which are believed to include the Aegis combat system and the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. That's the THAAD system. The Army deployed a rotational THAAD presence to Guam in 2013. Hill acknowledged in House Strategic Forces Subcommittee hearing last month that he had promised a report to Congress by June. But given the complexity of it, that's going to take us a bit longer to get there. Developing the desired protection for Guam is on a very aggressive timeline where we're at, he added. It remains to be seen what Senate appropriators will do, but there is support from lawmakers on both armed service committees for a missile defense architecture for Guam, in addition to the HDRH. House Strategic Forces Subcommittee Ranking Member Mike Turner, Republican of Ohio, said during a June 15th hearing that key programs were underfunded. He singled out Guam as one of those programs. House appropriators are the first to issue a spending bill for fiscal 2022, and it's unclear if Senate appropriators will follow, or if they won't follow, for that matter. Congress added $1.3 billion to the MDA's budget last fiscal year and appears poised to do the same this year. The MDA's fiscal year 2022 requests focuses on the development of future capabilities, including a next-generation interceptor for homeland missile defense, a hypersonic capability, and space-based tracking critical to threat tests. Well, I'll mention this at the beginning of the show tomorrow. We're out of time. I'll see you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. And 104.3 HD3.
Deputy down. I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. 2 Kern County Sheriff's deputies were shot, and 1 is dead after a shooting at a home in Wasco, California. Deputies were called to a house in the area after receiving calls that shots had been fired. The suspect was still armed when they arrived, and shooting began shortly afterwards.
We are still attempting to clear the house to check on the victims inside of the residence. I do not have their status at this point. We believe that there are 2 people possibly down inside the residence, and then the 3rd person is the suspect.
Kern County Sheriff Lieutenant Joel Swanson. Plus, Chicago's top prosecutor is proposing a plan for courts to address ongoing violence.
Kim Fox, she's the top prosecutor or state's attorney for the 5+ million people in Cook County. It's the 2nd largest county in the country. There is a proposal by local leaders in Chicago to move some of the nonviolent crimes to a city court.
The fact of the matter is we have an unrelenting gun problem in Chicago, and I cannot look to the people that I serve and tell them that we're spending more of our resources going after petty offenses that can still be dealt with than we are going after gun violence, and that's where my priority is.
Meanwhile, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle continue to work on police reform.
Fox's David Spund. Senators are working on wrapping up a bipartisan infrastructure deal, and its completion may be sooner than anticipated.
We're talking about a $1.2 trillion proposal that would do things besides just fix roads and bridges. It would also expand electric vehicle infrastructure and expand broadband access throughout this country. And we're hearing from a number of these key lawmakers who say the finish line is in sight. Infrastructure has certainly been a top priority for President Biden since taking office. Today, he tweeted, "The bipartisan infrastructure framework is a great deal for the American people, for blue-collar people, the folks being left behind now." We'll see if that makes any last-minute difference.
Fox's Mark Meredith. America is listening to Fox News.